the city you're dialing in from? All right, I see Bhavish from Jaipur. I see someone from Pretoria. Okay. In South Africa, welcome, welcome. Om from Mumbai. Thank you for joining us. It's great. We are close to 100 people in this room already, and it's not even 1 minute into the session. So I want to keep this on for another few seconds. So please bear with me. It's always good to know where the audience is coming from. So I see Anthony from Kumasi. Anthony, we were in Kumasi recently. I was there in March. We had our STEM delegation coming to Kumasi Technical University. So great to see you, Anthony, over here. I see Giancarlo from London. So thank you for joining in, Gian, and thank you for everyone who's come into the session. I think since we are at the 2 minute mark, let me get started on this with this session now, and let me do the introductions. My name is Sanjay Dhingra. I'm a co-founder and the chief operating officer at Seed Global Education. Many of you may have interacted with us in the past, but if you haven't, we are a firm which specializes in such interactions. We facilitate interactions between top aspirants like yourself and top universities, top schools across the world, like the one we are hosting today. In today's session, we are going to talk about risk. So it's a very special session. I am going to do my speaker's introduction shortly, but let's first talk about today's topic. What are we talking about over here? So today's topic is about risk management. It's a very risky world out there, right? And we have been seeing this through the volatility, the disruption that is happening across the world. Established companies are being disrupted daily by innovative, nimble startups. Their business models are changing. Regulation is very volatile, so things change because of that as well. And if those of you who have heard this term called VUCA, right? We live in a VUCA world. Those of you who haven't, I'm not going to tell you the response, what the full form is right now. You can Google it, or I'm sure Paul would possibly talk about it sometime in his presentation. But we live in a very VUCA volatile world. And consequently, CEOs of some of the biggest companies in the world today are trying to find the right strategy and discussing how they can alter their business models to survive this VUCA world. And there's pressure from Wall Street as well, right? If you look at Indian stock markets or global stock markets or anywhere in the world, there's a lot of pressure from these stock markets or investors telling CEOs to either disrupt themselves or get out, right? And let the disruptors take over, kind of thing. So, and in this, there's of course the risk of environmental, social, and governance issues. So, ESG movement has also become very popular, and there's risk related to that as well. And then global events or global uncertainty events like COVID-19 suddenly hit us, and we find ourselves in one of the riskiest time periods in history. So, in today's session, let's learn about how organizations and how top management is responding to such risky environment, how they are coping with all of this. And this, as future management aspirants or people who are looking to get started in their careers, this is a very important topic, right? At some point in your future, possibly you would be advising top management, you would be telling them how they should be managing this risk, or you'd be taking similar decisions to manage risk. So, in today's session, let's learn about risk management. And we are going to speak to a very special person. We are going to speak to Dr. Paul Walker, who is the Zurich Chair in Enterprise Risk Management and the Executive Director for the Center for Excellence in Enterprise Risk Management at St. John's University's Tobin College of Business. He's, of course, got extensive industry experience. He's published a lot of papers, developed a lot of analysis models. I'm going to let him talk to you more about his work and his details. So I'm going to hand you over to him shortly. But before that, let me also introduce you to Amber Staker from St. John's University. Amber works with the admissions department at St. John's. So we are going to hear, once we are done with Dr. Paul Walker's presentation, we are going to speak with Amber and talk to her about how you can possibly secure an admit at St. John's and study in person with Dr. Paul Walker. With that, let's kickstart this session, and let me hand you over to Paul.
Great, Sanjay. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for being with us this evening. For many of you, for someone might be in the middle of the night. For Amber and I, we're both in New York City. It's a great day in New York City, a little rainy, but good weather nonetheless. It's a beautiful time to be in the city. So my name again is Professor Paul Walker. I am a professor at St. John's University. I pretty much do a couple of things. So number one, I lead a degree on this subject, a couple of different degrees. We're going to mention that in just a little bit. You should also know that we also lead an academic think tank, a center on risk management. There's one of only 3 of those in the world, and we have one of those in New York. So the think tank helps us keep plugged in to the chief risk officer and board and executive community. It makes all of our courses more relevant, more current. So we try and stay connected with the business world and the not-for-profit world. For example, we do a lot of work with the UN, but we also then try and have academic degrees. And as Amber likes to joke, I have 700 white papers. That's not true, but we do try and produce a lot of research in this area. And a lot of it, oh, my phone's going off. And a lot of it, who uses phones anymore? No one in America. But a lot of it you can find online at the Center for Excellence webpage at St. John's University, or you can just email me if you would like. So what we're going to talk about today is managing risk. And it sounds so simple, but it's really very complicated. I'm going to show you what I mean by that in just a moment. But the reason that it's so significant today is this concept of managing risk has literally gone from, I'm going to show you in just a moment, almost nothing to perhaps the hottest topic in the world. It's gotten so hot that governments around the world are now mandating, writing laws to force executives, even nonprofits, even the Internal Revenue Service that collects our taxes in the US, to manage their risk. Stakeholder expectations are growing exponentially to lean on organizations to say, you better manage your risk. So what are they talking about? They're not talking about just insurance. They're talking about strategy, reputation risk, innovation risk, business model risk, macroeconomic risk, one of my favorite papers that we've been able to publish as well. I spent 2 days out in Silicon Valley just working with a big tech company there on how to link risk to innovation, to get better at innovating, to create more successful products. So this subject is really broad. So we're hoping you come into it with a broad mindset and say, wait a minute, this sounds kind of interesting. Besides the guy's got the name Paul Walker, is he related to that other? No, I'm not. I like fast cars. Unfortunately, he died young, so I wish I had his cars, and I wish I had his movie career as well. So we're talking about this big, broad subject. I also want to say to you, even though we're not talking about PhD programs today, but I can empirically prove to you, if you accept that phrase, that what we're talking about today adds value to the bottom line. You could imagine this very briefly. I set up some dependent variable that shows several metrics of value. And then from those and then I load a bunch of independent variables that measure enterprise risk management, how well an organization manages their risk. And surprise, surprise, boom, it shows up. We get strong, statistically significant correlations on these measures of managing risk lead to greater value. That just makes a lot of common sense, doesn't it? Think of someone you know in your life. I have friends like this that in some way annoy me, and I'm a little jealous, but I also admire them, who they exercise all the time. They only eat the right food. They never stay up late like I do. They don't like to do all the crazy things that I like to try and have fun at sometimes. They seem to live such a healthful life in all of their habits. On average, in the long run, right? I know there are exceptions to every rule. That person that manages their health risk is probably going to live longer than I am, because they just will, because they're doing so many right things. And this subject today, that's really kind of what we're seeing. So we're getting government pressure because we want corporations to manage their risk. We want the nonprofit where we donate money to manage the risk. The boards that oversee these companies are getting pressure. So everything has kind of come to a head, and I'm going to show you why. And Sanjay got us started already, and I'm going to repeat a couple of the key concepts that he did. And I'm going to pull up my slides, and you just tell me very quickly, can you see those slides okay, Amber? Does that look normal? It does. Okay,
Yes.
great. All right. So many, as Sanjay just pointed out, and they would say, hey, we're living in uncertain times. I'm going to say, yes, we are. And that shows up a couple ways. But guess what? We've kind of always lived in uncertain times. These are my friends over at Cambridge University. By the way, if you want to come join us in New York today, we're hosting an event with Cambridge University. We're having a roundtable on climate and risk right here in New York City. But Cambridge produced some really nice research a couple years ago. And just kind of look at this data on the left. This is the US stock market, the UK stock market. And what they try and document is how often stock market markets have wild swings. They call them peak to trough swings. And notice it seems to happen a lot in the US, right down here. And on the right-hand side of your screen, it happens a lot in the UK as well. And then they kind of do the averages. And look at this. On average, somewhere, let's just say a 15% swing or even a 10% swing, every 12 years, we have a big swing in the stock market, a large swing. So I'm going to say we sort of already have embedded stock market risk. Go back to 2008, the big financial crisis around the world, 2008. And then when did COVID hit? About 12 years later, 2020. So I'm going to say in your lifetime, you're probably going to get one in 2032 and 2044. And as human beings, we're never going to be able to take all the risk out of the markets and the way the world operates. So risk is there. There's no question that it is actually there. It shows up in a lot of ways. Before COVID, it shows up by a CEO saying, we got to develop new products. And even a car company CEO saying, we got to think of something besides just selling more cars. Hello, Elon is going to make electric cars, right? We get even Netflix that we all like to watch saying, we got to rethink our strategy. Or we get Wall Street yelling at CEOs and saying, hey, you've got to disrupt yourself. You've got to rethink your business model. So you see this strategic uncertainty and you see pressure from external stakeholders to try and run your business better. And then we get these sort of entire ages where these risks are harder to see. But if you think about what's happened around since 2008 with platforms and iPhones, and I mean, we really haven't tapped into all this stuff that has hit us in the last 12 years. I think the opportunities for new businesses and obviously new risk as well, but new success stories is really, we haven't even uncovered it all. So there's a lot of things that are out there. And of course, sometimes, as Sanjay mentioned, risk hits us in the face and COVID shows up. But all those things leads us to today. And notice right before Russia, Ukraine, people were talking about war. And even with COVID, we saw this interaction with climate and how the world was changing because we weren't driving cars, stuff, right? We were all off the road. And the big question it's kind of leaving us with is, well, what else is out there? This is just some of the risks that we've seen in the past. What else is out there? On the bottom right, you see a headline. And then on the bottom left, we see people in the Wall Street Journal saying, we've kind of entered a period where we're living in an age of unknowns. And I hope even in the first couple of slides, you're beginning to sense that this is why nonprofits, this is why energy companies, this is why auto companies or tech companies are feeling just a little uncertain right now. They sense there's a lot of risk out there. They sometimes know what it is. They sometimes don't know what it is. But what they all agree on is whether the government is going to make them or the stakeholders, the shareholders are going to make them. Someone is going to say, you got to start getting better at managing your risk. And what I'm going to argue today is there's a sophisticated, integrated, holistic, there's a right way to do it. And that's what we teach in our degree programs here. But let me just dig in a little bit more first. It shouldn't surprise you that everybody wants to know what their biggest risks are. This is a very generic risk map. You can see impact. So how big is the risk? Probability, how probable is the risk? Everyone wants to know what that one is on the upper right. Is that, I don't know, you imagine what it is in your own life. Is it your health risk? Is it your career risk? Maybe if it's career risk, that's why you're taking this webinar today. You want to learn about additional opportunities. Is it safety risk? Are you worried about your parents or your siblings or your children? Amber and I are always worried about our kids. My kids are grown and I still love and worry about them. But every organization, again, whether it's the UN or Microsoft, they want to know what the really big risks are. Why? Because you want to manage the big ones, right? You want to allocate resources correctly. And I got news from most of those CEOs. I know what the big ones are. We have evidence on it. If you come to St. John's, we like to do a lot of research. This is some research and analysis that we've done. Amber, I'm happy to send this to you. I don't know if you've seen this one or not before, but this is some analysis and research we've done here at St. John's. And what we show is the biggest risk facing most organizations, what we call the value killers, it's strategic risk. And here's what's amazing right here. So not only is it strategic risk, but it's First, let me break strategic risk into 3 dimensions. There's setting the vision. So if you're Microsoft or you're Pepsi or somebody else, you got to set the vision. Here's where we're going to exist as an organization. Then you got to align the organization, like, okay, everybody's on board. Let's get the right culture. Let's get the people, the processes, and the technology. And then let's execute. So 3 dimensions of strategic risk: set vision, alignment, and then execution. Vision, alignment, and execution. So here's the amazing news to me. The biggest risk is strategic, but it's actually the vision. So this is really amazing, because it says, as a leader or as a young person thinking about a career, new opportunities, that vision is where the biggest risk is. So sometimes the person with the ideas, think of Elon Musk or somebody like that, it really makes a big difference. And here's what's scary about this as well. When I ask executives, okay, notice over here, I've got 2 of the dimensions of strategy: setting strategy and then executing strategy. I will ask risk executives, okay, tell me honestly about your CEO of your organization, for-profit and nonprofit. Do you think your CEO, your leaders, in fact, are good at both setting and executing? And look at this number. It's shocking. Well, this number tells you that only 19% of the people out there, at least the ones that I surveyed, believe that their leader is good at both setting strategy and delivering on the strategy. Let's just stop and think about Apple for just a moment. They just had a new iPhone and a new watch, and I'm addicted to their iPhone, but I'm not getting much out of the new iPhone. I don't see that it's that much greater. I look at Steve Jobs since he passed away, and he was the visionary. He helped Apple set the vision, come up with the new ideas, the new products, the new models, et cetera. And honestly, my opinion, since he's passed away, they haven't come up with a lot of new ideas. They've had a couple, but not nearly as many. So the importance of setting the strategy is absolutely critical. Elon Musk is pretty good about doing this as well. He's pretty good about setting the strategy. Think about Apple's current CEO, Tim Cook. He's great about delivering on the model, but I don't think he's got the visionary skills of Steve Jobs or even of Elon Musk. And again, just to remind you, our analysis, and this is what we discuss in our classes at St. John's, and have you do as well, shows that vision is what pays off in the long run. So it's a lot of fun stuff, and it leads to value along the way, which is what we want to do. Why is this important? Why should you come study this with us or at one of our competitors? Obviously, Amber, and I hope that you would come with us, because 70% of strategic plans fail from a European organization that I've done some work with, the ACCA. The biggest reason, executives underestimate the risk. They're biased for 41%. And almost 60% are actually overconfident as well. We will get these executives and say, okay, so what is it you want to get better at? Look at this. Strategy connection, when we ask, comes out at number 1. So most executives say, look, there's something wrong. We know how to do insurance risk. We know how to hedge foreign currency. We know how to hedge interest rate risk. But the strategy and the business model one, we don't know how to do that. And we've got one entire class that is dedicated to working on this particular subject, which I think makes us one of the best programs out there, but that's for you to decide. But that, again, 70% say, I want to get better at this strategy risk connection. And here's why they want to get better. When I ask them, well, are you confident? You can see the blue here. Hopefully your colors are showing up okay. Only about a third say they're confident. That's really kind of amazing, isn't it? So a third of organizations say, yeah, I think I know what my strategic risks are. The rest are saying, yeah, I don't know. I mean, if I'm on a board of a company and the CEO says, I don't know what they are, I think I'm looking for a new CEO, because that would bother me. If you don't know who the NACD is in the North America and really around the world, that stands for the National Association of Corporate Directors. And they are really the ones that put pressure on board members around the world. They write guidance and tell them what to do and tell them what to ask the CEO. Look at a couple quotes from them. They're telling board members, question your legacy, your old business models. You need to get the company to assess your vulnerability to disruptive risk. not insurance, not hazard, not death, but disruptive risk. You need to understand your exogenous risk. We've written a couple papers on exogenous risk in the last 2 years. You need to understand your trigger risk. Wow, there's a goldmine of opportunities for some intelligent people to solve the trigger risk problem out there. No one has completely solved that one. So again, you see that this pressure is coming on organizations to, you got to get better at this. And here's what makes it hard. It's whoops, hang on, did I already do that? Oh, no, I skipped one for just a moment. McKinsey says, all right, well, if you're facing that problem, this is some of their wise advice. You got to get together more frequently to discuss the risk. You got to get talking about risk management. I hope you can't hear that in the background. They're having a fire drill in my campus. It's a required thing in New York City. So Amber, call your police officer husband and tell him to turn this off. But I hope that's not bothering you. I apologize. It will be short. I don't have to leave the office. I've managed my risk. They promised me I can stay in and teach this class, even though they're having a fire drill, because it's a fake one. It's just a drill. Okay, so McKinsey says the obvious, right? What should you do? You need to get together and discuss the risk. You need to get the right people in the room. And I hear a lot of people tell me, we got to think about who that is. And you got to have that conversation. So you've got to get better at this. Here's one of the reasons why it's hard. Risk means a lot of things to a lot of people. It does mean impact. It does mean hazard. It does mean downside. It does mean VUCA. It does mean uncertainty, volatility, but it also means things like upside. Are we looking for opportunity? Are we thinking about the utility or the value? Are we thinking about how fast the risk is moving? Are we thinking about, are we strong? Maybe that downside risk, we just need to be robust against it, or we need to be more resilient and be able to bounce back and get the organization moving. Or maybe we need to have the ability to pivot. We need agile as a skill set. You can see agile coming in over here. So when I start talking about risk, not only does it mean a lot of risk, but it's a really complicated subject. And I hope I'm already beginning to convince you, this is why when we get stakeholders and leaders and CEOs and board members and others saying, please get better at managing your risk, it's not just we got to do better approach. It's not just Paul Walker and Vin Diesel driving the car faster or getting a faster car or a new turbocharger or whatever they always do in that show to make it faster. It's really building a sophisticated process with the right tool set. And again, I'm focusing a little bit on the strategy side today because that's one of my favorite tool sets. And here's the funny part. If you don't know this, if you've never seen this research, you actually have a risk gene in some way. So when experimenters give you a risky question, if you participate in these experiments and they put measurements on your brain, there's a part of your brain that lights up when you actually have to make a risky decision. I'm not talking the fight or flight syndrome, but if people put you in a risky situation, even a gambling situation, a part of your brain actually just starts to light up. So there is something weird about this. I'm going to back up because not only is it complicated and in big demand, but it's a very human thing, but we're just not trained how to do it. And here's what's stunning to me. This is why I'm glad you logged on tonight. And if you don't learn anything, but tonight, I think you're coming out ahead. This is just me using Google every year for the last 12 years. Look at this. 2011, I went onto Google and typed in enterprise risk management. 8 million hits. Wow, that's a big number. 2013, 54 million hits. 2018, 179. 2022, almost 800 million hits. So you see the explosion of this concept. Why? It's really for all the reasons that we've been talking about, maybe a couple other big ones as well. It's become a expected skill set for leaders of an organization to manage their risk. And that's why you see the search over there just exploding. And even academics, if you want to get your PhD or study this area or come here and do some independent study, look at this. So in 2015, where people were starting to pay attention to enterprise risk management, right? And now look at this. In 2015, I didn't do this in years earlier, but maybe I could, right? So ERM was kind of, it was a new academic study. People were starting to study it. Accounting and marketing were way ahead. 2018, accounting and marketing are still way ahead. Look at the current year. Now there's more academic scholarship on the subject we're talking about today than there is on marketing and accounting. So what I'm encouraging you is, yeah, maybe you went to whatever school you went to, I don't know, or what you studied. Maybe you studied marketing or accounting. That's fantastic. Not a lot of schools offer enterprise risk management. We do, and I think it's a great place to join because it's really becoming a dominant theme around the world. And recently, an enterprise risk management paper won this one of the best papers of the year over the last decade. So you see this explosion of a topic that sounds kind of important. Well, what is it? Here's one version of what it is. It's a framework. So there are some very sophisticated groups of people, some very brilliant people that put together kind of, well, what is it? It's about managing the risk right here in the middle around your mission, around your strategy, around your objectives, implementing, performing, trying to get to greater value. And there are components to it, and there are principles. This is used a lot. This one right here is used in North America and in Europe. Volkswagen, what I'm showing you right now, this slide, Volkswagen uses this slide and the name of this framework in their annual report, and they communicate to their external stakeholders about the risks facing Volkswagen, and they mention this very document. You can see how this concept is now becoming embedded in organizations around the world. A lot of US corporations do as well. And if you don't know, I gave you the link down there. I don't know, Sanjay, if they can click on the link, maybe we can post that in the chat room in just a moment. But so last year, you can see 2022, I worked with what I think was an incredibly prestigious group of Indian executives to write an enterprise risk management code for the country of India. These guys are very smart. And what their vision is that at some point, the Indian government will maybe adopt this or mandate it, or the Indian Stock Exchange will mandate it. They're trying to change the mindset of Indian executives about the right way to manage risk. So again, you see people are saying, well, we need help on how to do this. Here's one version. Here's another version. So a North American version and an Indian one. So what are we doing at St. John's? What we're doing is, and Amber's my expert, I'm just a professor, that's all I am. But I want to mention, we have an MBA in this subject. We have an MS in enterprise risk management in this subject. We also have a certificate I forgot to put on here, Amber. I apologize for that. So, and we have a center. So I've mentioned the center on the far right. I'm going to repeat myself. There are 3 really good centers in the world. There's one in Raleigh, North Carolina. There's one in New York. I think we're the best. And there's one in Cambridge. And then there's a couple ERM degrees, but not many. And I think we're one of the best. I think we have the best degrees. The MS, what I love about the MS is you get 3 electives. So maybe you take analytics classes or cyber classes or consulting classes or banking classes. We've placed students at JP Morgan, or insurance classes because you want to work in that discipline. My son became your risk consultant. We placed a lot of students in risk consulting. Or maybe you'd like the prestige of an MBA. With the MBA, you get the prestige, but you just don't get the elective. So these are 2 really good options. We also have the certificate option, and Amber, please correct me on any of this because I'm not an expert, but the certificate is you just take 5 classes and you get a certificate. You can convert the certificate to a degree by continuing on in the program. There's some rules around that Amber can answer your questions about that later. Here's the good news. For the first time ever, these are all either in person or online. You could do some classes there in India. You could come to New York for some classes and do some classes in person. I think we have the world's only, I mean, if anybody out there finds another one online, email me. I would love to see it. I don't think anybody else has it. I think we have the world's only strategic risk class. We're developing a risk consulting class, working with one of the big consulting firms here in New York, where you could come into New York for a couple of weeks and get this risk consulting class. So I love our programs. We're trying to get better. If you see someone out there with a better program, tell me. I want to fix mine to make it even better. I want us to be the best because I've got people out like Amber out there working so hard to try and make us better. And Sanjay, I just want to make sure I'm not running over on time. Can I keep talking for a little bit?
Sure, please go ahead.
I'm good?
Yes, you're good. I've also shared the link to the India Risk Code that is developed by you and the other prestigious colleagues, so they can find the link in the chat. It's a very prestigious publication.
Yeah, thank you. So you did put it in the chat room for them?
I have.
Thank you much. And Amber, maybe you can drop the links to the center of the degrees in there or put your email address in there as well. So this is kind of like my secret sauce. I've been thinking about this for a while. I think about when you're trying to run a business, I don't think there's any question that you've got to build the right business model, build a value proposition. You've got to find out on the far right. This is a theory by the CEO of Procter and Gamble. And he says, look, you got to figure out, this is a field. And in America, we like to play baseball, not cricket. Sorry. We play football, but not European version. Anyway, that's a field. That's where you're going to play whatever game you're on. The CEO in Procter and Gamble talks a lot about, you got to have a vision for where you want to play. Where do you want to win? And sort of my theory in my strategic risk class is, okay, you got to know where that is. Think about where you want to go. But you got to build a business model. You got to have the strategic capability. It's got to include the right value proposition. You've got to understand that there will be surprises. There will be risk along the way. You got to align the organization. You've got to constantly manage disruption and trends and all this uncertainty, the VUCA that Sanjay was talking about. And sometimes you just got to be agile. You got to say, we got it wrong. We need to pivot and go into this direction. So this is kind of my theory. That's the foundation of my class. And this one on the bottom right, if you haven't seen this book, it's a really good book about blue ocean. So these two books, if you don't do anything today, but just buy a new book, the one at the top is called Playing to Win. And the one at the bottom is called Blue Oceans. These are great bestsellers in the world of strategy with tremendous concepts, deep concepts about risk buried in them as well. So one of the things that I try and do in this class is I try and get to this concept of, well, okay, you have a nonprofit or a business, but do you know what your business model is? Because if you don't know your business model, you don't really know your risk. So we have a lot of fun actually with this concept, trying to document our business model so we can really understand what exactly is it that my organization does? How do we create value? Why do our customers come or our nonprofits come? Why do people donate? Why do people buy? It's a lot of fun. I also like to think of it this way, which is a little bit more fun. What we really, and by the way, a CEO taught me this lesson, what we really try and do is get to the heart and soul of the business. What really makes that business successful or unique or makes it tick? And it's a lot of fun when you start to think that way, because what I'm a big believer in is that if you don't really understand the heart and soul of the business, then you're managing the wrong risk. You just are. And so the class is a lot of fun because we get into some really cool concepts. We talk a lot about, can you shape or adapt the future? McKinsey's got this great article. It has stood the test of time for years now about the 4 levels of uncertainty. And we cover that and we apply it to organizations. And we think about, well, if that's your future, can you change your future? Or do you just need to adapt? We do go over this book, The Blue Ocean Strategy. Again, I'm telling you, you should probably buy that book. It's probably sold 5 million copies. Sanjay and Amber, if I wrote a book that sold 5 million copies, I wouldn't be here today. I would be on a beach somewhere. So I'd be in that background. Wherever my backdrop is, I would be there relaxing or doing something, meditating or something. I'm not real sure. But we cover these best-selling strategy books, and then we link it to the concept of, well, what's the risk associated with those ideas? It's so much fun to go into some of these concepts. And if you've never thought about your value proposition, we focus on the importance of the value proposition, whether it's a nonprofit or whether it's a for-profit. So these are just some of the things. This is something that even Amber has done. We have so much fun. I had one student say to me, so if you think college is boring, that's fine. I'm a professor. You're not hurting my feelings too much. But I actually had a student, Amber, this is Greg, say to me after this exercise, I'm not lying, I can introduce you to this student. This student came to our program. He was a college athlete, and then I don't even know what he studied in his undergraduate. He got the degree. He went to Deloitte Consulting. He now does Amazon. He now does customer risk management for Amazon. He's taken this degree and turned it into a great career. Just a small sample, a sample of one. But when he took this class, he said, Professor, that's the most fun I've ever had in academia. And I thought, well, that's great. I'm trying to teach you to manage your risk. But in this class, we actually create business models, because the ultimate risk management for a company is we'll come up with new ideas, right? So that class is a lot of fun and is my favorite exercise as well. I get a big kick out of it. We constantly remind the students, I'm giving a talk today Amber, just a little bit. I don't know if you're still coming or not, Amber. So to MasterCard, Hewlett Packard, the UN, PepsiCo. We've got people from all around the world on this subject right here about, are you looking for external things? Are you paying attention? It's very easy to just make your product or do your nonprofit thing and go home. But the smartest people I've met got to constantly be looking outside and paying attention. This is a quote from a book I wrote on this particular subject. I'm going to say it a little bit differently here, but it's the same concept. Anticipating and reacting to noise and signals. So what's happening in your world around you is vital, not optional, absolutely vital. So you got to look outside. You got to pay attention. This is what I'm talking about this afternoon. I don't know if you know, but this is Climate Week in New York this week. And so I've got a lot of executives coming in here today at this roundtable. We're partnering with Cambridge, by the way, and we're going to talk about understanding climate and sustainability as this external thing. And how do you adapt your business model to that? That's fun to do. That's opportunity. And to me, opportunity is a blast. This is another exercise we do in this strategic risk class where we try and document, well, what is your business model and how do you create value? And then we say, oh, but what's happening in your world? So this business model might be going to a movie theaters, which we like to do in the US and you probably like to do in your home country. But we talk about, wait a minute, but there are all these watching trends. People are watching things on their phone. There are bandwidth changes. There are driverless cars eventually coming. There's pandemic, there's post-pandemic, there's all these other alternatives. So these are all things you really got to think about, all these different dimensions, or you really don't know what all of your risks are. Another fun tool we do with the students is we had them figure out a company's product portfolio risk. And this is some students of mine a couple of years ago that were doing it for Facebook. We also spend time making sure they talk about not just new revenue, but do we have any ideas that transform the company, right? I mean, that's what we all want to do. We want to transform maybe our lives, but certainly the company today. And honestly, I think this is one of the biggest takeaways. And let me say this two ways. If you go onto the St. John's Center for Excellence webpage, if you want to click on that, you're going to see a section there called ERM speeches. And I hope that doesn't look like we're trying to brag or anything. I just wanted to document the speeches that we've given. But the number one reason that people call me and say, hey, would you come give a talk? It's on this concept of strategic risk. People are still really trying to get better at that. And here's the way that I look at it. I think it's a skill set. It's a tool set. I'm not McKinsey and I'm not Deloitte. I like those firms and I'm happy that they want to come here and participate. But to me, it's a tool set. And I think for you and I to be successful going forward, we have to build our tool set. And that's what we try to do in this particular program, is help you build your tool set. And here's what's kind of fun to me, if you think about it. I'm going to let you decide, because when this webinar is over, which I hope you're enjoying, and I don't know if anybody besides me has noticed, but there's a lot of people on this. So you've got a lot of your peers thinking about this subject, or a lot of your colleagues as well, but there's a lot of people listening. But just think about, when we're done today, where is the world going? So I hear this one all the time. On the left, I hear, well, look, I give up. I can't predict it. I didn't see Russia, Ukraine. I don't know what the next war is going to be. I don't know what the next pandemic is going to be. Walker's Cambridge data that he quoted to us says there's going to be another financial crisis every 12 years. You can see some people kind of go, I give up. The world is completely unpredictable. But you know what? A lot of the people I meet go, oh, no. With big data, with AI, I'm going to even add, with better enterprise risk management, I think everything is predictable. I don't know. I think if you adopt this, you better have a good answer to your to the leadership of your organization of why you've given up. I think it's somewhere in between. There is some uncertainty, but man, we need to identify that and don't let it take us out or ruin our profitable year. We want to try and minimize this and get better at this. So I think the answer is somewhere in between. And here's one of the things I covered. I just want to end pretty much with this. There are a lot of theories of success, and there are a lot of theories of failure. And in this strategic class, we go through the best-selling strategy books around there. But the biggest theory of failure, in my opinion, is not adopting the thinking we're talking about tonight for most of you, this morning for me, is really beginning to think about what are my big strategic risks. And now I'm going to go to another professor out of Switzerland from another university, from IMD. And notice what this gentleman is saying, this professor, Reisenzweig, I believe is the way you say that. He's saying that if there really is this much risk in the world, then basically every business book you've ever read is wrong and is flawed. And instead, you need to adopt on the right-hand side this concept of uncertainty and trying to get better at your thinking. By the way, it's way beyond probabilistic thinking, which he mentions here. If you think about that slide I had with all the complexity of risk. But I like the fact that he acknowledges that even the regular business training we had probably is not enough. We got to get better at trying to do this. And lastly, to get you excited, just look how hot the topic is. So if you want to come, I will say that I honestly think we have the best program. If you find a better one, send it to me. I want to try and improve. And I think we have not only great degree, we have great classes, we have scholarship money. You have to apply for that. Some of it is substantial. As a reminder, it's online or in person, MS, MBA, or certificate. And Sanjay and Amber, you've both been so nice and been patient and let me talk, and I will shut up and turn it back over to you.
No problem, Paul. This was extremely insightful. I will say this for the audience. I went to a B school, a prestigious B school in India. At that time, risk was coming up as a topic. A lot of aspirants into the consulting industry would really focus on this topic. So if you're looking to get into consulting, strategy, anywhere which involves decision-making, this is an extremely, extremely relevant and important topic. So thank you, Paul. Thank you for this extremely insightful session. Those of you who don't know this, I hosted similar session with Paul last year. I learned quite a bit from that. This again today was an eye-opener, so it's been a pleasure to be hosting this session. What I'm going to do next, right? I want to, of course, Paul, ask you a few questions. But
Sure.
before we go ahead, I want to run a poll question and got some audience interest. So to the audience, if you can see on your screen, the poll question is live right now. The question is, how likely are you to pursue a master's program in the US? Even if it's or it could also be framed as, how interested are you to pursue a master's program in the US? It could be at the MBA level. It could be at a business master's level. But let us know what is your interest level in pursuing further studies in United States. Okay, I have the responses coming in. I have around 85 people who have responded as of now. So I'm going to wait for a few more seconds, give the audience a chance to respond as well. In the meanwhile, those of you who didn't find this earlier, I had told you about VUCA World. I'm posting what VUCA stands for in the chat window. So VUCA stands for Volatile, Uncertain, Complex, and Ambiguous World. Again, it's a very interesting topic. Our world is extremely volatile, extremely ambiguous, and of course, complex and uncertain as well. So this topic is extremely interesting to me as well. But I have 99 responses to my poll question. I want to wait for one more person to respond before I wrap this up. Great, I have that 100th response, and let me end the poll question and share the results on the screen. So around 50% of our audience said they are very likely to pursue a master's program in the US, or they are very interested in pursuing a master's program in the US. 25% are somewhat interested, so they are borderline, and another 25% are currently undecided, don't know if they want to really do this or not. Great, so thank you for letting us know your preferences. We are going to speak to Amber very shortly. We are going to talk to her about how you can possibly get an admission and possibly even a scholarship to study at St. John's and study from Dr. Paul Walker. But before you do that, let's take your questions for Paul now. Let me ask you some difficult questions, Paul. So the most upvoted question as of now is from Faisal, who's asking, what is the risk in outsourcing your core activities? Right. So as a company or as a company owner, what is the risk I run if I outsource some of my core activities to someone else?
Well, that's a great question. And I'm going to go back first to our center that I talked about. So that question came up. So at the center that we run, it's an enterprise risk management center. We have a summit once a semester. And I go to my board. You can look on the webpage. It's a very prestigious board. We've got the head of risk from IBM, MasterCard, General Motors, Estee Lauder, PepsiCo, a lot of very prestigious companies. So once a semester, I go to them and I say, what's the most important risk topic you're facing running these global organizations. That topic came up last year, and it was all about third-party and supply chain risk. And so the big answer is that third-party and supply chain risk has many dimensions. There's specifically third-party, and there's various dimensions of third-party risk about how reliable they are, how well do we know them. And then there's supply chain risk. Are they key and critical products, and where are they? How close to production are they? Are they mission critical supply chain parts? So what's happening in the world today, which is why I love this subject, is people are getting really sophisticated about managing the answer to that question. We had a couple companies come in and present their answers and their approaches. And here's what was amazing to me. One of the ones we had present on this was General Mills. Some of you may be familiar with the global organization, General Mills. They got so good at supply chain and third-party risk management that they now consider it, they call it themselves, not my labeling, a strategic advantage. They can manage their supply chain and third party better than anyone. So this went from a risk to something that they now look at as this is why we're getting more sales and winning it in their business because they're better at it. So third party and supply chain, great question. It's very deep and has many dimensions, and you're spot on. Companies are trying to get better at it. If you want to be a consultant, this is not solved yet. People are still working on this because of all the global uncertainty that's happened in the last several years. Supply chains are changing, third-party relationships are changing. A lot of opportunities, if that's your passion, a lot of opportunities to pursue that.
Interesting. Thank you, Paul. In the interest of time, I'm just going to take 2-3 questions for now and then come to your Amber's presentation and then possibly come back to you, Paul, with the more questions. But the next question I want to take is from Ohene, who is asking, how do we ensure that our data analysis methods are robust and capable of identifying emerging risks, especially those that may not be apparent through traditional risk assessment approaches?
Yeah, what was that student's name again?
That's Ohene.
Train.
Sorry?
Okay, we tell that student to please come apply to our program because that's a brilliant question as well.
I
like that.
My first thought was he possibly works in risk management already.
Oh, well,
so that's where the question is coming from.
So I mean, I cover that in class. We talk a lot about you've got to learn to get the right data to analyze it correctly. It's very easy to get lazy in risk management and go, well, I think the risk is big. Okay, I can't make CEO level decisions with qualitative responses. Sometimes I can, but I prefer not to. So companies are trying to get better at this. Again, I would say the opportunities are endless for trying to get better with having the right, consistent, high quality data. There is no question. Let me just give you a couple easy ones. We used to say, oh, I can't measure climate risk. You can actually. There are ways to do it. Not perfected. We have a long way to go on that one. Cambridge is trying to do it, by the way. They're going to be here today. If you were here, I could introduce you to them. They're trying to do it. A lot of Aon's trying to solve that one as well. But think about it. In the past, we couldn't. Now we're trying. Same thing with reputation risk. People used to say, oh, well, you can't measure reputation risk. There's a guy here in New York that launched a company on measuring and selling reputation risk insurance. So tremendous opportunity on that key question about how do you do it? Where do you do it? The business model and strategy side, a little bit harder. If that student wants to, please come to New York. Let's study together. I think there's a $1 billion opportunity if you can figure out how to measure business model risk. That's like almost investment type stuff of, wait a minute, if we figure that one out, we're gonna make it a trading strategy instead of teaching it in class, by the way. So that's the big one if you want to try and solve the biggest one on analyzing the data. I love the question though. It's a great question.
It is. It's from Ohene from university. He's possibly a student at University of Ghana. So he's just posted that in the chat as well. Thank you for this question. It's a brilliant question. Really enjoyed that question as well. The next question I want to take, this is from Rishabh, who's got 5 years of experience within the real estate sector. And his observation over these years is the criticality of human resources. How is it you challenge organizations to hire, empower, encourage, and retain quality resources? And how do you account for the risk associated to your talent leaving and going away to competitors, or address risk associated to the human factor?
Wow. Again, I love that questions, and I'm going to give you two examples. Let me say, it sounds like this person maybe has some experience in that area, so they're going to understand the first part of what I'm going to say. I think sometimes companies underestimate the HR and talent risk issue. I think it's a huge danger to do that, to think, oh, well, this risk over here is bigger than that one, and HR can't be much of a risk. The workplace has completely changed. I don't know about where all of you are, but in Manhattan, it's a work from home environment. My son just has an entirely work from home job, right? So I'm not real sure where the workplace is going, but HR is an absolutely critical risk, and companies continually underestimate that. I'll give you two quick examples. When so first, our intro and our intermediate class, there are no really good textbooks out there. This is why maybe you should consider St. John's. Is those two classes I wrote based on doing research, based on going out to companies' headquarters. That's why I think our classes are better on average. So for example, when I went to Walmart's headquarters, one of their top risks was an HR risk, and they spent a lot of time documenting. And by the way, back to the second question, Walmart can measure the HR risk specifically related to strategy and corporate value. I don't know anybody else in the world could do that. They couldn't do it until they implemented an enterprise risk process. Then they had to identify HR as a risk, and they did. And then they had to get aggressive and say, can we measure it? Took them a while, but they went, we can measure it, and it relates to value, and we got to get it right because it's a huge risk. The second one I want to give you an example of is you can see this in IBM's annual report. IBM's new CEO, some of you may be aware they switched CEOs recently, is all about talent agility as a risk. What IBM is saying is, we don't know the next talent. It's AI today. What's it going to be next year? What's going to be in 2026? IBM's new CEO is saying, I need people that have the ability to learn skill sets, new skill sets. So maybe today you're good at machine learning or data analysis, but I need you to learn something else in a couple of years. So this concept of talent agility is a brilliant one. So you've got to be able to learn new skill sets. I like that kind of thinking.
Interesting. And Paul, you did touch upon this, and this is what our next question is also about. How's AI and machine learning disrupting risk analysis? This is from Joshua, who's from Accra in Ghana.
So, okay, what's today? September 18th. In 5 weeks, just right below where I'm sitting right now, by the way, that background is not real. That's fake, as some of you know. If anybody knows where that is, send me an email. It's where Sanjay and I definitely want to go, right? But so we're having a summit just on AI risk in a couple of weeks. I've got a Microsoft AI ethicist coming in. I've got, let me see, I've got a Fortune 50 company where the chief risk officer is incorporating AI into their enterprise risk processes. I spoke to a big nonprofit out of DC on Friday afternoon who said, AI is a risk attacking us. It's not just one we're using, but people are using against us. So this is a huge subject. No one's figured it out. A lot of people are beginning to explore it. We're going to explore it in 5 weeks. That's why I think we have the best program, Amber. We try and stay current. We try and write about these topics. We try and bring in outside experts. And that's why I think enterprise risk management is kind of a fun field, because it changes a little bit each year as new risks become more important and we learn new things.
This is brilliant. Thank you, Paul. But in the interest of time, let me go to Amber's presentation now. Let's hear from Amber about how our attendees can possibly come and study at St. John's and learn about enterprise risk management from you. So I'm going to hand the floor over to Amber, and we'll come back to the questions very shortly. To the audience, stay put with us. Amber's got a very short presentation. You'll learn about how you can possibly get through to St. John's University, the Peter J. Tobin College of Business, get an admit over there, what's the evaluation criteria. You'll learn all of this. And once the presentation is done over the next 7-8 minutes, we'll come back with our questions to Paul. Over to you, Amber.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you, Dr. Walker, for the wonderful presentation. My name is Amber Steiger. I'm the Director of Graduate Admissions here at St. John's University. And I am very admittedly biased towards this program. Dr. Walker is one of my favorite professors, as I'm sure you can all see why now. And I am also an alum of the program, which I use every single day. Even though I'm not in the risk industry, I am constantly using all of the concepts and tools that we learned in the degree. So even if you are not currently in the risk field, it is a growing industry, as Dr. Walker mentioned, and I really encourage you, if you're a critical thinker, strategic thinker, to consider the degree. At St. John's, we have 5 different colleges, and we have 65 plus graduate degrees. Today, I'm just going to very briefly mention a few things about the business school for those who are interested, and then I'll also provide my contact information at the end if you have any questions on what I talk about today or any of our other programs. Very quickly, we have very small class sizes. We have over 195,000 alumni, many of which are still in the New York City area. Our master's programs are continually ranked. We're number 18 by Fortune, number 38 by US News, and we hold the highest accreditation within the United States. We're one of only 6 universities in New York which has that accreditation. Within the Tobin School of Business, we have the Greenberg School of Risk Management, Insurance, and Actuarial Science, which is our flagship program. Many of the programs are based on our Manhattan campus, which is behind me on the screen, and in the picture as well, which is down in the East Village of Manhattan. So geographically, we are very close to the industry and have lots of industry speakers who come in and interact with our students. As I mentioned, we have the Manhattan campus and then also the Queens campus, and then we also have the ability for you to study online. So there's a lot of questions in the chat about being online versus on campus. There's no difference in the courses. They're the same courses taught by the same professors. You're able to do the entire degree online, you're able to do the entire degree on campus, or you can do a combination of both. So sometimes even our international students will come to campus for a semester, get to learn their professors, get to experience New York City, and then head back home to either continue working or do the program online. As part of the application requirement, we have a very quick application. It takes about 5 minutes to complete. We require 1 letter of recommendation from an academic or professional source, your resume, a statement of professional goals, and transcripts from all of the secondary institutions you've attended. If your courses are outside of the United States, we also require course-by-course foreign credit evaluation with GPA calculation. And then we also require the TOEFL, IELTS, Duolingo, or PTE for those who native language is not English. These are a list of all of our MBA concentrations. So the difference between the MBA and the MS is that the MBA is 9 core classes that span all different business disciplines. So it's business law, accounting, risk management, marketing, I'm trying to think now, finance, 9 different core classes, and then you take the remaining 3 classes in the concentration. So we have 17 different concentrations all listed here. And then we also have, the STEM MBA. So that, rather than the 36 credit MBA, is a 45 credit program where you pick 2 of the 6 concentrations that are listed here. And then for our MS degrees, we have 10 MS degrees that do a deep dive into one subject area. So if you were enthralled in today's subject with Dr. Walker, then I would recommend doing the MS program, because you're going to learn all about enterprise risk management. You can take up to 4 classes in ERM, and then the remaining courses would be in risk management and finance, and then 3 elective courses that can help hone in your level of expertise. We also have 7 different advanced certificate programs. I apologize, the ERM certificate is not on here. This was a new certificate that was just approved, but we have 7 different certificates. And as Dr. Walker mentioned, these are 15 to 18 credits, and they're basically half of either an MS or an MBA, and then you can roll them into one of those degrees as well. Big part of who we are is also our global destination courses. So I had the opportunity to go on a risk management course when I was in the degree that was in London, Munich, Zurich, and Paris. By the time we had left, we had met with more than 80% of the world's global reinsurance companies, and we were meeting with everyone in the C-suite. So we weren't meeting with a random HR person, we were meeting with the presidents and CEOs of those companies, and it was amazing networking opportunities. We also have career career advisors specific to the School of Risk Management and the Tobin College of Business. They help you the second you come on campus with your resume, with interview skills. We have 2 career and internship fairs each semester, and then they also can set you up with shadow days with our alumni to see if the field that you're interested in would be a good fit so that you can shadow them for a day. One of the big questions we got in the chat was on scholarships. So there's no better scholarships than within the School of Risk Management. Everyone who's accepted into those programs are eligible for scholarships ranging from $5,000 to full tuition. And you'll know that at the time of admission. We also have merit scholarships for all of our other MS degrees and work experience scholarships as well. Those are all automatically considered for accepted students. We also have the Alati Fellowship, which is only for students who are accepted into the MS Enterprise Risk Management and the MS Risk Management and Risk Analytics. That is a full tuition fellowship. That does require a separate application. We have the Promise Scholarship, which is for students accepted into the MS in Actuarial Science. If you have 2 SOA CAS exams passed before you start classes, then you're eligible for a $40,000 scholarship. And then we also have specific dean scholarships, which you may be awarded, and graduate assistantships, which provide full tuition coverage and a small stipend. Okay, that's it for me. This is our contact information here. I'll also add my information in the chat, but if anybody has any questions for me, I'll happily respond to them, but I'll turn it back over to questions for Dr. Walker and Sanjay.
Great. Thank you, Amber. This has been extremely interesting. There are some questions coming in regarding admissions and studying at St. John's as well, but let me go one by one from the most upvoted ones. Dr. Walker, the next question I want to take up is from Akanksha, who's asking, how can businesses balance the need for innovation and growth with the necessity of risk management in uncertain times? So how do you offset risk which comes with any innovation that you do against the management of the core business?
Yeah, and the key for that, I referred to that a little bit earlier. The key to that is understanding the risk in innovation. And as I mentioned, I spent some time out in Silicon Valley trying to teach one of the big tech companies how to do that. You can innovate more if you know the risk associated with it. It just makes sense, right? There are other 2 dimensions of it. One is you got to understand the risk and uncertainty coming at you, what I call wave 1, because then that tells you, whoops, I need to innovate more, I need to innovate better. That tells you about the problem and the uncertainty coming. Then you've got to create your own innovation. So there's seeing it, and then there's reacting. The second wave is reacting. And you got to manage the risk on both sides, right? So risk is a core competence for today's leaders.
All right. Akanksha, so that was a really good question. If you do decide to study more about risk, you know where to head, you know where to find Dr. Walker. But Amber, the next question that I have is from Suhani, who's asking, are there any online MBA classes, or does St. John's offer an online MBA as well?
Yes, so the MBA as well as the MS degree in Enterprise Risk Management are both available online.
All right, so Sahani, I hope it helps. You can possibly take classes from anywhere in this world and still study from Dr. Walker. Great. All right, I've got to pick up the right question before I go to the next one.
I also forgot to mention, if you don't mind me jumping in real quick, Sanjay,
Sure.
that everybody who attends today does also receive an application fee waiver automatically.
Awesome. Great. That is another value add for the audience. So those of you who are still in the room and you haven't left, you know that you're eligible for an application fee waiver to St. John's. That way you save money even making the application. Amber, I think you did answer one interesting question, which I wanted to take up, was around the credit evaluations. So do you require students to do course by course credit evaluation, something like a WES evaluation, or can they avoid that?
So it is required in order to receive an admissions decision. We require a course by course evaluation from a NACD member, but we actually have a breakdown of all of the members as well as their costs. So if you want to email me, I can send you that Excel spreadsheet.
All right, great. And the next question is around the English language requirements. Is there a possibility to get a waiver on the English language tests?
Possibly. It would be on a case-by-case basis. So
Okay.
after you apply, you can send me an email and I can let you know if you'd qualify for that waiver. If you haven't taken the exam yet, we can also give you a Duolingo fee waiver.
All right. So, William, I hope that helps you. So, if you are looking to take a English language test, then possibly approach Amber for the Duolingo fee waiver. And if you want to check for a waiver, write to her or apply and then write to her to check for the waiver as well. Amber has already mentioned about the application fee waivers. I just want to reiterate that as an additional benefit to our audience today. If you are applying to St. John's this year, you can possibly avail of the application fee waiver. Just submit your application from the same email address that you registered for this session with, and automatically the application fee waiver would be applied to your application, and you'll save money over there. Uh, I think I've answered most of the relevant questions. If to the audience, if you have some more questions that you want me to answer, take up, just post your question in the Q&A box now, and I'll wait for a few seconds and take that up as well. In the meanwhile, let me take up one or two more questions. Uh, so, Dr. Walker, this is around strategic planning for future businesses. Now, when companies or organizations or CEOs do the strategic planning exercise, not all CEOs may be expert in risk management. So, what is the role of risk managers, or who gets into this pathway, or what are the career paths for risk managers to become more influential in an organization? Where do you see
Well,
your graduates going?
yeah, there's a couple ways. If you're the risk manager, the ideal role would be for you to earn a spot at the strategy table. That would be the ultimate, right? So there are ways. The tool set slide, you can apply some of your tool set. Another way to do it is to train the C-suite. I've done this. I have trained CEOs on how to. I mean, some of the stuff we've talked about tonight, but a little bit more sophisticated and deeper. So train the CEO or the board. Last fall, I trained the entire finance department at IBM. Why? Because IBM says, I got a bunch of finance people, but they don't understand risk. And we got to get them to start thinking about risk instead of just net present value and internal rate of return and cash flow. So we got to get them to be risk thinkers. So I think it's either training or try and get yourself involved would be my short answer.
Interesting.
And I wanted to mention that Amber left out. So the Greenberg School is the #4 rated risk management program in the U.S. So we're there. And in case you didn't hear it, she said 5,000 to. She said it very quietly, Amber. 5,000 to full. We have some full scholarships. So and a lot in between. So didn't want you to miss those words that she said out there. And for the third time or maybe the fourth time today, online or in person. So just like they do in those commercials, they keep telling you the same thing over and over.
So broadly, if I have to summarize, this is the value proposition. A top 4 rank with the institution. So Greenberg Institute is the top 4 institute when it comes to risk management. So you can possibly study from Dr. Paul Walker, who's the executive director over there. You get an application fee waiver to apply. You become eligible by attending this session. You have also become eligible for consideration for scholarships, which may range from $5,000 up to 100% of the tuition fee as well. And if you want, you can also take up this course in person or online. So both those options are possible. I hope I've summarized this broadly and correctly and not promised anything beyond what I'm supposed to promise over here. But Amber, there was a question around the duration of the courses at St. John's. So the master's programs are of 2 years duration, or those of shorter duration?
So the master's degree can be done in 18 months, which is 3 semesters. The MBA can be done in 2 years. It's 36 credits. And if you want to do it part-time online or part-time in person, if you have the visa abilities, you can complete it in up to 5 years.
All right. Interesting. And this is a question which has come up from Sophia. She's asking if the application fee waiver can be used for multiple applications. Can she apply to multiple programs in the same application cycle?
You can apply to multiple programs in the same application cycle, but only one program within the business school. So if you have any questions about which program is the right fit for you, myself or my team are happy to meet with you and discuss all the different options and which might be the best option.
Perfect. And there were a few questions which had come up about how do they avail the application fee waiver. So let me reiterate this. You don't need to do anything additional. Just submit your application to St. John's Peter J. Dobbins School of College of Business with the same email address that you used to register for today's session, and that application fee waiver would be automatically applied. If you still have questions, if you still want to get some more clarity, Amber has been kind enough to share her email address in the chat. So you can write to her. Her email address is I'm just going to copy it. I'm going to post it once more in the chat. So you can write to her directly and get clarity about your further questions as well. Great. With that, I think we have taken up most of the important or relevant questions that I could see in this session. Uh, wow. Okay. The last question which has come up, and I want to take this up, was from Kofi. He's asking if this session would be held once more. So, Paul, you can imagine they're really interested. If some of them have missed some session, they want to learn from you once more. So, to those of you who are still in this session and missed some parts of it and want to hear once more what Paul said and how the session was all about, you can watch this recording of this session on Seats YouTube channel as well. I'm quickly going to post a link to the YouTube recording. If you missed any parts of it, or you want to share this session with your friends, sorry, if you want to share this session with your friends to watch, you can use that link, share it with your friends, and you can watch the whole session on our YouTube channel as well. Uh, okay, since there are more questions coming up, I'm tempted to take up one more. This is uh, from Kumango. Paul, he's asking if the risk management course is taught within the STEM MBA program as well, or is it just in the Masters of Risk Management?
It's only in the enterprise risk management classes.
Okay, it's only in the enterprise risk management classes. Uh, is that course offered as an add-on or a specialization, or any way that MBA students can also learn from you if they're at St. John's?
Yeah, so an MBA student can get an MBA with a concentration in enterprise risk management.
Perfect. So, Paul, this is a testament to how interesting they have found your session. They really want to come to St. John's and learn from you, especially.
Subject. So I hope that I appreciate that someone else is interested. That's great.
Great. With that, let me take your permission to wrap up this session. We are slightly over time already. So those of you, I still see some questions which have come in, but Christina, Harshdeep, I'll let you write to Amber and get clarity from her over email about your questions. But with your permission, let me wrap up this session and thank Dr. Paul Walker for doing this wonderful session. Thank you to Amber, you as well. Thank you for getting him to this session once again. It's been a pleasure to be hosting him again. So thank you for making this happen. And it's been a pleasure hosting both of you and also hosting our audience. I still have around 200 people who are in this room. So you can see the interest that this session has generated. So thank you to the audience as well. Thank you for being patient with us. It's been wonderful hosting you today. Take care, all the best, and thank you once again, everyone.
Ciao.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Have a good